Welcome to the Linen Suit and Plastic Tie podcast. This is the podcast where we dissect and analyze the epic, the amazing, the cool, the awesome, the even awesomer power of storytelling and learn how to harness this amazing power in our everyday lives. I'm Gorav.
And I'm Kevin.
Kev. Season 5, Episode 2. We are recording in the same room, which we've only done twice before. Once for our 50th episode, that was like, I want to say 15-20 episodes ago. And then the first time we did, it was like one of our first 10 with Carrie Notchenberg.
Yeah.
You forgot, yeah. That was back in when I was staying in my sister's apartment during the pandemic.
We might have actually done it 3 times, because I think there was one either anniversary special or end of season special where we were both in your studio. If you remember, we went through the entire list of our storytellers at the time.
Yes, you are correct. I love how you said your studio. Like, people are gonna be like, he has a studio. He means my studio apartment in Santa Monica. Apartment. Yeah, he doesn't mean my podcast studio. We're not there yet. We're also recording this because we are working on setting up our YouTube channel.
We are.
Look up Linen Suit and Plastic Tie on YouTube. You can currently find all of our past episodes in audio form. And starting this season, we're going to start uploading some exclusive video content. So if you want to see our faces, check us out on YouTube. It's just another way to listen. I mean, I guess watch. But yes, you're right. I think one of the anniversaries we filmed together, but we filmed very few episodes together in the same space. And I think back to our Notchenberg episode, great content, great guests, and the audio quality was quite garbage. And I feel like in a few years we'll look at this and like, that's terrible. We've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. And this is actually one thing I really enjoy about this guest, is that this guest is not afraid to try new things and not afraid to push the envelope, not afraid to kind of even parody what you've seen in the past through marketing. And it's with a product that we've talked about before on the show. It is a product that I've been enamored with because they are just selling water. That's all they're doing. But they've taken on this huge brand and they've become this exciting product. Kevin, what am I talking about? Who are we talking to today?
Well, today we are talking to Andy Pearson, VP of Creative at this, I don't even know how to describe this brand, but he's VP of Creative at Liquid Death, which, like you said, Gorav, is a water brand. And you have been talking about this brand for years now. We've started talking about this brand as early as season 2 or something like that. It's definitely been a couple of years. You're obsessed with it. I know that. At this point, we both consumed Liquid Death on various occasions in different flavors, but it's for the most part just water.
Liquid Death is a water company. They sell different types of drinks, different types of water, in a fun tall boy can that you see beer come in. So you'll see a lot of parties where someone, instead of like just drinking a beer, would have a can of water, Liquid Death. It's cool. It's something to hold. It has that tactile feeling of a beer can, but without actually having to drink. Also, you see it a lot in the skater culture with kids, getting to have that cool can that says something about them, but it's just water, right? They tell these really incredible stories. They had a Super Bowl commercial that was like drinking on the job. They're a really interesting and cool company. And today we're talking to the VP of Creative.
So without further ado, let's just get right into our conversation with Andy.
Hello, how do you do? Sit down, gather around. We've got stories about stories that'll mix you a drink of wonder and mystique. Cause life can be dry, better dress for the times with the linen suit and plastic tie. Linen suit and plastic tie. Now here's Gorav and Kevin.
When that concludes, we are officially rolling. So let me actually open up my
let me do it too. So
Grim
the sound,
Leafer.
There you go.
Nice. I love that sound.
It's crisp sound.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. Cheers. And yeah, it's so exciting to be recording another episode of LSPT Pod, another great story to learn from. And today we have none other than Andy Pearson, who has a great story. I know Gorav's super excited to get into this one as well. But Andy, to kind of start us off, you can tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your story?
Sure. I am the VP of Creative at Liquid Death. I've been here going on like 3.5 years. And before that, I spent about 13 years as a copywriter and creative director at a bunch of different ad agencies as freelance. I mean, how far back do you want me to go? I can keep going all the way back to childhood, but I think that's enough for you guys for us to get going.
Like Kevin said, I've been really, really excited about this one because I've actually wanted someone from Liquid Death for a while, because the marketing behind Liquid Death is so interesting. The idea of it. I'm curious about a little bit how it started. Like, how did you get involved with Liquid Death? What is the idea behind the brand?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll start with the last question first. Is Liquid Death at its core, it was a reaction against marketing, I think. And our founder, Mike Cesario, was a advertising creative and designer himself. He was a couple things. He was kind of frustrated with having clients that weren't buying work that he knew was great. So that was one part of it. And then two, he made this really interesting observation that as a creative or marketer, the brands you want to work on, the most fun brands out there are the ones that are also, the worst for us. It's like, when you talk about like funny advertising, it's always like beer commercials on the Super Bowl or something like that, right? Or like candy commercials are really fantastical and crazy, or energy drinks, sponsor base jumping and MMA and all this crazy stuff that feels really aggressive and fun. And there's this real dearth of good advertising behind products that are actually healthy and thoughtful. And so the idea behind Liquid Death was, in some ways, it's super simple. It's like, what if we made healthy things, water, low calorie, flavored sparkling soda and iced tea? What if we made those healthy things actually feel super unhealthy? And that's sort of like the simple flip on the head. And we don't really talk that much about like the health benefits, not health benefits, but about the healthy side of things. We just act very unhealthy while in service of a product that's much healthier than a lot of other stuff on the market. So that was the real basic idea. And then also tied in with that was making it look like a beer. So putting it in these aluminum tall boy cans. And as we were looking into that process, it was like, well, why don't water brands put water into cans, right? And that was also kind of a marketing thing where water for years has been marketed on the basis of purity. And to have something that's pure, you have to see it. In order to see it, it has to be in a clear bottle. And so for literally decades, we've been marketing water in plastic bottles because of a strategy that no one had ever kind of bothered to question, which is really funny because we see a lot of resistance, especially when we launched, to people saying, no one's ever going to drink water out of a can. And it's so, because we've been so ingrained to have to see water and conditioned because of the marketing, not because of any real need, right? Think of all the crazy shit that people drink out of a energy drink can that has all kinds of crazy chemicals in it that we can't see. And we just guzzle that down. But to put water in a can, suddenly people don't trust it. So it's been really interesting over the last couple of years to see that story evolve and to see canned water actually become now pretty accepted, where when we first really launched, people said no one would ever drink water out of a can. That's kind of the Liquid Death story. And then I got involved because Mike, as he was building the company, like I said, we had kind of worked together, or I'd kind of worked for him on a freelance basis for a couple of years. And I saw him launching the brand. And I was like, holy shit, he's really going for it. He's doing this thing. And so I've been kind of watching and admiring, from afar. And yeah, he just texted me out of the blue one day and was like, "Hey man, what are you doing? We could use some help over here. We're trying to scale up what we can do on the creative side of things." So yeah, I joined 3.5 years ago, and we've been doing more and more in-house ourselves. All the creative is now in-house ourselves. The video production, everything we make is now in-house, 100% ourselves. So we do it from like literally soup to nuts all ourselves, which is really fun and gives us a lot of control over what we put out in the world.
I imagine that's incredibly important because the brand is where the real equity is, right? With Liquid Death. I imagine it's so important.
It's very specific, and it's it's really hard to get right. And it took me a really long time to understand it, working day in and day out for months and months. I thought I was going to come in and be like, yeah, I get it. I understand it. And then it took me a really long time to get it. I think on the surface, people see, we tend to be pegged as like, oh, it's heavy metal water, and we're just doing crazy stuff with no regard for any sort of taste or morals. And it's totally untrue. There's all kinds of things, a lot of thought and nuance that we put into every single thing that we do. Things like comedy and other things should feel effortless, right? When something is done really well, it feels very unnoticeable. And I think that's what people don't kind of realize going in, is all the thought that goes behind something. That's why we do it mostly ourselves, because we've kind of lived in it and understand it and know where all the pitfalls and guardrails lie.
You mentioned it took you a little bit of time to like really understand the brand to a point where you can lead it and shepherd it and grow it. Yep. What were some of the unlocks? Like, what were some of the key lessons that you learned during that process?
The first was me just trying to understand the brand in the first place. I tried to make like a brand book based on every lesson. When I would talk with Mike or when we would do something, I would be like, okay, that's a little rule. That's a little thing for me to understand. And I was kind of collecting this brand book for myself that I was just building and to try to understand it. And every time I would write something in it, I'd be like, I hate that. And I had like 30 pages of all these little ideas, and I looked at it together and I was like, God, this sucks. And after trying that for like a half year of building this brand book, I just gave up, because I kind of realized that the brand was way more organic and had to flow and change and had all these really conflicting rules about it that you can't capture on like a simple page in a couple sentences. So that was just like giving up control of the idea of a brand. Rather than a brand, Liquid Death acts almost more like a character. And if we can get inside the head of the character, then it starts to be really interesting, because Liquid Death is this thing that is like bumping up against other stuff in the world. And it's kind of ingesting pieces of pop culture and spitting it out in this real weird way with our own bizarre, again, thoughtful, but really satirical and dumb perspective. And so if you can kind of get in the brain space of that character, as we've started to do, it becomes really easy for us to make the work, because we kind of just ask ourselves, like, what would Liquid Death do in this situation, or do if we partnered with this celebrity or this brand we're going to work with? There's usually kind of there's always like a right answer. We're not just looking for a bunch of different things to look for them. We're kind of looking for the right answer. So that was a big unlock. And then even before that, one thing early on actually that I thought was really funny was, do you guys know Meow Wolf?
I do. Yeah, I went to the Omega Mart in Vegas.
Yeah. So in Omega Mart, it's a grocery store of all fake products. Not a single one of them are real, except for Liquid Death. And and it's been that way since the beginning, and it's still there. And you can look it up. There's pictures of it that I have and stuff. They just have cans of Liquid Death. And I was like, God, how do I interpret that? Like, what does that even mean that in this grocery store of all fake stuff, Liquid Death exists? And what I pulled out of that is, Omega Mart is almost this like interdimensional grocery store, right? From another dimension. And I was like, oh, right. That's kind of what is fun about Liquid Death, is it feels like how you would market water in a slightly different fucked up dimension. And they do it really real and normal there. Like the grocery store is very normal, except for all the weird stuff on the shelves, right? And so it's almost like for us, the stuff we make, most of it feels really normal and it feels like an ad for something, but it's like filtered through this other weird perspective and point of view. And so I think that's the fun of Liquid Death. I always say it feels like some other weird timeline has kind of broken through and is like pushed its way into ours for a moment. And that's what's kind of fun to see it. So that was kind of another like weird unlock for me on this idea of like playing stuff very straight, but coming from a totally different perspective, and then you just play it straight. So it's been kind of a fun process of like unlocking all these little things and to understand what we're doing as we're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, for reference, from Omega Mart, I have these 2 cans over here. One is a dehydrated water, and then the other is antimatter in a can. So I love that Liquid Death just ended up on the shelves as just like
it's
a
wild
product.
Yeah,
it's an interdimensional product then.
Exactly. I told that whole theory to our founder once, and he was like, "No, that's not right." I was like, "Okay, fine." It helped me. You know?
Yeah, I think for one thing, I've been really curious about this perspective that's unique to Liquid Death that you speak of. I've watched a whole bunch of Liquid Death marketing videos, if you will, and was super intrigued by, for example, in one of the videos, there was a blind taste test between a Liquid Death drink and some of the most expensive beverages on earth. And by expensive, I mean they're made from expensive edible ingredients that when turned into a drink would probably taste utterly disgusting. So there's a whole sequence of blind tasting videos like these. But what were the messages that you thought about conveying there, and why did you pick to tell that marketing story in such a way?
That's a really good example, because that was pretty early on when as I was joining, and when we first started, we just had the still water, then we expanded into sparkling mountain water. And then this was going to be the first time we were going to talk about flavors, right? We were launching and we talked about this a little bit internally. We were like, we have to prove that it tastes good. And a lot of brands talk about flavor, right? But then we were also like, flavor's completely arbitrary. And everyone's like, tastes great. What the fuck does that mean, really? Right. So it's all, exactly. it's all BS anyway. So we're like, okay, how do we prove it tastes great, but also kind of pull back the curtain on all this marketing BS in the first place? Originally, we were going to brief an ad agency on it, because we're like, okay, this is a big launch for us. We should bring in some help. As we were trying to kind of write this brief and the strategy, we just started talking about taste tests, and we're like, oh, well, brands prove it by doing a taste test. Like, what would be a Liquid Death version of a taste test? How would we make a taste test that made fun of taste tests, but also proved our point that these taste really good? And it literally was not more than that. We were just like, what if we just put this stuff up against super expensive stuff that also is gross? And then we kind of all looked at each other after like 20 minutes and we're like, that feels like the idea. Let's just do that. And so instead of going off and like paying people a bunch of money to come up with ideas for us, spending a bunch of time and money, we were just like, let's just do this like super dumb blind taste test that we win. So it does a lot of things. It proves the point of that this stuff tastes great, but it also is taking the piss out of marketing in general, which is also part of our DNA. Like I said, kind of going back to the founding.
It's the anti-establishment against the drink industry, but also advertising itself, right? It's the story of, this is the rebel brand, That's what I get as I explore this stuff, especially with taste tests, which I think is a really interesting topic because it has such a storied history in the drink industry, right? Coke versus Pepsi taste test was iconic, right? It's a really interesting way of kind of tapping into that brand and building that story.
Yeah. And it's funny you say rebel, because I hear that a lot. People are like rebel or edgy or disruptive or, all these kind of words. And I don't know. I don't think we see ourselves that way at all. I think we're just like very clear-eyed and honest. I think that's actually the thing for us. Cause like I said, I come from an advertising background. Our founder does too. We're kind of like, we've seen it. We've lived it. We're like, it's all bullshit. And not like we're high on our horse, but we're just like, man, the industry takes itself so seriously, and it's all to try to make people part with their money, essentially. So let's kind of poke it in the eye. It deserves to be taken down a peg. And so I don't think like we're rebels. We're just like, Liquid Death is sort of pulling back the curtain and just calling out kind of bullshit wherever we see it. And a lot of times that's in marketing, but also we do that with big sugary soda drinks, or we've done it in the past with a weird law where in the state of Georgia, which I'm originally from, where you couldn't pass out water in voting lines. And so I think like anything that we think is stupid will and is in pop culture, we'll kind of go after it and have a laugh at it. Plastic pollution, another great place for us to talk about it. Environmental issues have always been done in a very like, you should feel bad about yourself. Everything is terrible. You need to be doing more. And so when we get to talk about our Death to Plastic mission, one, we're doing it from a place of like, let's change the demand for plastic. Let's actually like, rather than putting on people, let's figure out a better solution for it. And then also let's have a little gallows humor about it. We've done stuff where we've made stuffed sea creatures that have like straws stuck in their nose and are bleeding everywhere. And we sold them as cutie palooties. We've done all kinds of like pretty dark humor stuff around plastic pollution, but humor is based in truth, and people overlook humor as a really powerful mechanism to connect with people, right? Because when we laugh at something, if one of us said something, we both have to believe it's true to laugh at it, right? And so we use humor in a way to really connect with people that hasn't been really traditionally done before. So I think that's a big part of what we're trying to pull off here.
Yeah, no, I love so much of what you said. I like this idea that like the water and the drink and the item is kind of that tool and avenue to poke fun at things that you kind of just call bullshit on. That you're like, well, this just doesn't make sense. So let's see what Liquid Death can do with that, right? And I love that creative push you guys have on that. Also, something you said earlier about, I don't know if I've ever like inherently thought about it as a health company. And I think the more I look into it, oh, that actually makes sense. I think the line seems very healthy. It's water, what have you. But that opposite of it, right? It's death. You talk about that. It's not that green, health brand that we're hit over the head with constantly. It's
Right.
kind of the opposite. It's the fun one. Because I think health food in the health industry, the stories behind health is like, you will be healthier, but your life will kind of suck. Right.
Yeah. And also, I mean, there's all kinds of reasons and ways that people drink Liquid Death, which I think is so cool. But, there's a lot of people that use it because they are trying to cut down or cut out alcohol. And we hear stories all the time that people are like, Liquid Death was key to my sobriety journey. Or people that say they're cutting out sugary sodas and Liquid Death is part of that. Or moms that are sending emails to us saying they're high schoolers were addicted to energy drinks and now they drink water, And so, but we never talk about any of that stuff because again, we just want to make something that people inherently, if we were like, if you're cutting out alcohol, consider drinking Liquid Death. Like being sober is cool. That's the way that stuff has been marketed in the past. Right. And so that just either doesn't connect or it kind of like calls you out. And I don't think people want to your point, it's like health and this idea is about going without. And I think with us, it's about being this addition to your life rather than a subtraction from it. Right. And so, yeah, that's all kind of tied up in what we're doing without us ever having to really call that out in a specific way.
That's so important because like one with Liquid Death and the metal cans and the tall boy cans and things like that, you get that sensory experience. You can hold it. And if you're with some people drinking beers and you're holding the Liquid Death, it's not like the uncool one or the 0% one or the one that's like this person's subtracting from your life. That idea in marketing is so important where you tapping into like it's not about not drinking, it's about drinking liquid death.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's such an interesting because I see all these like anti-smoking things and like the anti-drinking things, and people are like, well, take this out of your life, you'll be better, all this stuff, but you're approaching it as additive. You're intentionally never saying it's better for you than this or it's to do this. It's like this is an option that's also good.
It's funny you bring up smoking. There's an old do you guys know the Truth campaign, the anti-smoking stuff? It started back in the late 90s, I believe. There was a settlement in Florida where a bunch of tobacco companies had to basically pay into a fund that would make anti-smoking content for teenagers. And the original campaign was developed by this place called Crispin Porter Bogusky that was out of Miami at the time, this ad agency. It's where I worked for about 5 years. This is much later than this. Mike was also there for a time. And it's exactly what you guys are saying. Everything was like, smoking is unhealthy for you. It's bad for you. And tell that to a teenager who thinks they're going to live forever and has never considered their own mortality. No one cares, right? Mm-hmm. So what they did, it's a brilliant move, is that the Truth campaign has now changed very much over time. But originally, the work was all about how you're being duped by big tobacco. And the idea was that as someone who smokes, there's a boardroom somewhere of a bunch of big fat cat tobacco execs that are making money off of getting you addicted to things and putting all kinds of carcinogens in it. The health message was like smaller, but it was mostly about you're getting duped. You're getting bamboozled. And so for like teenagers who feel like, like fuck the man, anti-establishment already, that was the powerful message. And it was a really successful campaign. And that work was part of a huge decline in teenage smoking over years because they did this totally different tactic that actually found a way to appeal to teens in a way that no one had ever spoken to them before. And so I always look to that. We talk about that a little bit with some of the work we've done with like anti-sugar stuff. That's why I love marketing, is because there's so much mindless, thoughtless marketing that kind of masquerades as like, look how strategic this is. But really, if you're going to make an actual change, you have to throw out everything that has come before, start from a totally fresh perspective. And how can you build something from the ground up if you knew nothing and you just looked at what it was? And that's kind of the story of Liquid Death too, right? From the beginning, that's how we make every decision, is like, if we were making the decision for the first time ever. Every day is a new day over here, and we're kind of throwing away any preconceived notions about what we should or shouldn't do and just look at really interesting things to do that probably make more sense than the kind of rote behaviors and tactics that most marketing departments and ad agencies have done for years and years and years.
As someone who's been in this space a while, like working with ad agencies and hiring people who've worked there and working in this space, when you try to be and do this thing different, how do you avoid being institutionalized? How do you break bad habits? How do you say, okay, these are the lessons I was taught that worked. How do I break them so I can tell unique stories?
For myself or from people here?
For yourself and through leading teams.
I think you can teach people over time, but you have to inherently have that desire to deconstruct things. Like that was the work that always was really interesting to me, was something that kind of deconstructed the idea of an ad and use it against itself. I guess if I look back at the work I did as like a student in ad school, like that was the kind of work I was making. And then also you look at a lot of people that work here and our founder and everybody, like a lot of us come from like backgrounds in skate or punk or metal, and obviously not exclusively, but like the stuff we grew up on was Mad TV and Jackass and all this stuff that was like deconstructing culture and messing with it and like spitting it back at itself, right? I think it's more that sort of punk mindset, for lack of a better term, that you want to tear stuff down, because that's really interesting to build something new out of the pieces of that.
The way you approach creating these quote unquote ads is almost like you don't want to call them ads. Like this is entertaining pieces of content to explore your brand like anything else. I think people forget this too in the ads industry, that you can create things that are entertaining, that split up the content. It's actually the most important thing you can do. Right. So I love that you approach it as like an entertainment element, not like I'm trying to sell X units. I'm trying to get people excited about the brand. I want them to watch it on YouTube, not in between content.
Yeah. And we, until recently haven't really traditionally run any sort of media. Mm-hmm. A lot of our stuff was just all organic, built for the internet. And more recently, we've started taking some of the stuff that has done really well for us organically online and, smudging that down and putting that into like connected TV buys and stuff online. And the numbers of how that stuff performs are like off the charts because it's crazy shit designed to be actually entertaining and made to be something that people genuinely want to see. And then it's put into a 30-second format on TV where nothing else around it feels anything like what we're doing. And so of course it does way better because we never designed it to be a commercial in the first place. But when it has to function as that, it like blows away everything else. So like you're saying, we're starting with this idea of making something genuinely entertaining for people. And of course, there's things we can put in there that people learn along the way, but we don't have to be so like on the nose and like transactional in this sort of experience that people have with us.
You talked a bit about the partnerships that you do. Obviously, there has been a bunch of pretty high-profile ones, like Martha Stewart, and of course, Deep from The Boys. Is it hard to make your partners get your brand? Do you always go for the partners that you think will get it, or is there more organic and you just kind of have to, figure out a process to convert them?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So those are two great examples, right? The Boys feels like it's right in our wheelhouse, right? The Boys is sort of almost this alternate reality TV show where it's like this alternate world that's kind of like ours, but superheroes just happen to exist in it. And so that's really fun for us because it's like, that feels like a world that Liquid Death just naturally kind of exists in. So, when they come to us and they want to do something, that's a real easy fit. But then Martha Stewart's a great example because that partially works because you're like, how the hell did that come together and happen? So obviously that stuff is a little bit more work to actually make happen, but that's kind of part of the magic. So we, I think we do both of those where it's like, oh, this makes sense that we would do this together. Or like, holy cow, what, but I think we've gotten really good at one, we have a really good track record with people, and we've been really able to make people feel okay with taking a risk on us. And I say risk in like a lot of quotes because people who come from a more traditional or conservative background in the way they market, initially they're very nervous. But the truth is we've honestly really never gotten any like negative blowback on anything we've done. And even if we ever did, like that kind of conversation is good, but we really don't. Like Martha's a great example. That was kind of earlier on, and we were coming off, we had done a Super Bowl spot like a half year prior. And we'd seen that was one where like the internet was divided on Twitter. Is like, people were like, how could they do this? And people loved it. And so with the Martha Candle one, we were kind of bracing for like, we felt good, but we're like, if there is blowback, we got to make sure it's okay. And there was like nothing negative. Everyone was so pumped about it. It was covered in Bon Appetit and Food and Wine. And my mom is passing me links to it because she's seeing that we're doing something with Martha Stewart. And it was just universally loved, almost to the point where we were like, damn, I wish more people didn't like this. Like and so because people have come to kind of expect it from us, right? And we've like made a kind of safe space for comedy in the marketing world for like, that's kind of rare because a lot of marketers are very nervous about comedy, because comedy inherently, you're taking a risk by saying something that is unexpected. It's a risk in one sense, but it's so important to connecting with people. So with partners, we're able to, for ones that are nervous, we're able to kind of gently hold their hands and walk through it, and we make it safe for them because it has been safe for us as well.
I think this idea of comedy in advertising and like in just telling stories is so important. And I look at some of the other brands that I think are doing this interesting well as well, like Duolingo or Dr. Squatch. Are there other brands you see playing similar playbooks, leaning into this comedy, leaning into this honesty, trying to find that line that inspire you?
No.
Nice. That's fair.
I was going to ask that. I'm like, I mean, I'd much rather look to weird shows on Adult Swim and the way SNL handles stuff. And, you know, that's the stuff we're always talking about. I'm not like, oh, look at what this other brand over here did. That's cool. Cause usually it's not. And, or, you know, the brands you mentioned, they're doing great work and it's very successful, but it's not like our style. It's the same way as if you had Dave Chappelle trying to tell Jerry Seinfeld jokes or something, right? It's like everyone's style has to be different. So to look at some other brand and the way they're doing it and be like, we're going to do that. It never matches up. So we'd rather look at the stuff that like feels real to us. I think like The Onion is another really fun, and they're a brand, but they're also a media company. You know, they do all kinds of amazing satirical stuff, but then they also have started doing real world stuff by trying to buy InfoWars and, you know, so I think there are brands that we love, but not in the traditional like brand sense, you know?
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, especially with your type of marketing, your type of story, it's so important you pull from these more not authentic, but organic sources than an ad on an ad on an ad, right?
Well, yeah. And there's stuff that, like I said, there's stuff that we consume that's ingrained in us. So we're not trying to mimic something else, right? It's like, it's the stuff that we love. Like at the end of the day, Liquid Death, it's just this kind of mush of all the stuff that all of us here like. Which sounds silly, but what a great way to build a brand rather than like try to manufacture this thing that it's like, well, here's the white space in the market. And all of our market research says that people want to be talked to this way. And so we're going to make it look like this and it's going to appear like this. For us, it's just like, hey, let's make stuff that we like. And I bet there's a bunch of other people out there who like that stuff too. So then it just kind of, like I said, it just kind of comes out of us organically and it feels, people always talk about it like feeling authentic, which is hilarious because it's satire and parody, which is like the least authentic thing you could possibly have. It's the most disingenuous, but because it's naturally coming from us, I think it feels really personal and real, which is weird and cool.
I think it's so important. Like we do talk about authenticity a lot in this show. We have a lot of people come on. It's like humans, even if you can't describe it, we have a pretty good bullshit detector. And if something comes off unaffected, fake, annoying, or like unreal, we sense that and we don't connect with it as well.
Yeah.
I think about like for us, when we introduced our theme song last year and we didn't include it for the first 4 years. Right? We had no theme song. And we waited like 4 years before we created one. And it became a very natural. We didn't create it. We're not musicians. We hired someone. But when we worked with the musician and we worked with the creator, it was so organic because while it might not be a good theme song for my life or Kevin's life, but for the show, we had this brand, we had this story. And even if it was a little hard to define through the conversations, be able to just say, oh, this matches, and it would only match us.
But it's interesting what you said there because you did it for 4 years without the thing. And then you understood what you were trying to do. And then you were able to do it, right? And so I think a lot of people are doing it backwards where you're like, you put a lot of thought into it up front. And you're like, well, this is what we think the answer is. And then we're just going to kind of like do that and hope that works. And we've done the exact same thing that you're talking about, which is like, let's put stuff out there and let's build this thing. And it doesn't have to all be complete and finished and perfect when we put it out in the world. And we're going to learn by making it, and the process of making a bunch of stuff and then also putting out and seeing reaction to it. That teaches us and gives us feedback to then like keep building and keep building and keep building. So that's, again, it's like why we don't have a brand book is because that's saying like, here, we have all the answers and this is what it should be, versus just doing this really iterative, creative process and strategic process over time gets us to what it should be rather than what we think it should be.
Yeah, I mean, for us with the theme song too, we've talked about how crucial it is for our show. And if we had started with something, it'd be vastly different, and we would be framing our show based on it versus framing it based on our show.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You know, we've talked a lot about, so you have these flashy big spots, great partnerships, excited. You're in the mind space. You're exciting people about the brand. How does that translate to me going to a grocery store and buying the product?
We understand that marketing is a long game. I had a client once. No, man, it was, I'll say, because I don't really care. It was Pizza Hut. We were working on this big rebrand for them, and we launched. I was kind of half involved. It wasn't my full thing, and I didn't do it in the TV, but they launched this. Went and did this big TV campaign. They launched it, and within it was 5 days or something, they hadn't seen sales shoot up, and they're like, we're pulling it. And they freaking pulled this huge campaign that had been worked on for half a year, spent millions of dollars to put into, because they didn't snap their fingers and see immediate sales out of the stores. And it was so nearsighted and so unrealistic to the way that people actually make decisions, right? And so I think from us, we understand that, especially for a brand like Liquid Death, it's kind of this long game where even when people try for the first time, you guys may have experienced this. It's like everyone has a really similar story, which is you get handed a can for the first time somehow, and you're like, what? I thought this was beer or something. And they're like, people are like, no, it's water. And you're like, it's water? I thought it was alcohol the whole time. And then you go back and you replay all the times you see people drinking it, and you're like, whoa, what? I've been living, it totally kind of recalibrates the all this thing that you thought was real. And then you're like, oh, it's just water. That's really kind of weird and funny. And then you read the side of the can and there's funny copy on there, and then you drink it and you're like, oh yeah. And then you go to throw it away and you're like, oh no, I recycle it because it's a aluminum can. And you have a full experience that didn't come from necessarily get 50% off when you buy 3 cases or whatever. It comes from kind of a long-term story that you have. And now you have a really interesting experience that's way deeper. Even though it's your first time having the product, it's way deeper than someone who just cracked open some other fizzy water and drank it and was like, oh, this is pretty good. So yeah, of course we have ways that we track performance on things, but we take a much more global approach in what we're doing. And then, we have specific things we want to hit over time, different SKUs, different categories, whatever. And so we'll push that from time to time, but with kind of different tactics, understanding that it's a big, long game.
Yeah, it's that injecting a little bit more fun and excitement into your life in small ways. I think it's such a fun thing where it doesn't just have to be for a sober party or this thing. It's something fun, and not everything has to be so serious all the time.
Yeah.
But on that, as someone who lives and breathes this brand, do you just think about death a lot now? Has it become just something from a spiritual level? Is it something that do you think about death a lot more now because this is the brand that you are giving your work career to?
No, I'll say, man, have kids and then you'll think about death a lot. You think about your mortality way more once you have little tiny children. And that's one of the misconceptions. Like I said, when people start working on this, it's oh, we're trying to do scary death things. And it's no, the death part is just a funny way in. And so we always look at the death angle is more an 80s horror movie style of death. Like horror movies and comedy are very close together. They share so much DNA, and that's where the brand kind of falls, is right in the middle of that. And so we don't ever really go to places where we're talking about actually bodily harm to people, actual death. It's not funny to think about, but like hacking up your thirst with a chainsaw, with a rusty chainsaw, is like a funny kind of thing that isn't quite real enough to be depressing. So it's definitely dark humor, but there's the right touch that we're using when we're doing it.
Andy, we have learned so many great stories and insights from you today. It's such a wonderful opportunity to be able to celebrate your story and, of course, get to know one of our, and definitely Gorav's, favorite brands.
Mine too. I get to work on this every day. It's like we're all as much fans of it as anyone, and I feel really lucky to be able to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be mindful of our precious time for this closing segment, we call it Suspenders. It's where we ask you a fun random question that really could be about anything, and you can give us any answer you feel like. And question of the day is, what is your favorite t-shirt and why?
Whew, that's a good one. I feel like I have so many t-shirts that I've lost that I'm like, where is that thing? I have a t-shirt that is a cat holding a handgun. That is like such a weird, it's by this weird t-shirt company called Wouch. It's like people making shirts out of their place in Brooklyn. They've been doing it for like 20 years, and they make really weird clip art. It's like crappy graphics, like awful graphics. So it's a cat with human hands, and it's poorly like collaged together, holding a handgun, and and kind of like pointing it out at you. So I always like in art school, I always liked wearing it, but then I was also half nervous because I'm walking around like with a gun pointed at people. So I'd always only like choose to wear it in the right situations where I felt like someone wouldn't glance it and like mistake it off in the distance. So it was my most dangerous t-shirt, so that's what I'm going with.
I love it. Amazing.
Because it'd be really sad if they're like, yeah, he died because he wore this t-shirt. Like, what a shitty way to get shot.
I know if Gorav, you remember, one of your Secret Santa gifts to me was a t-shirt, a custom t-shirt you made or you had ordered. That was a lot of photography puns, because I do a lot of photography. But it's a pun that has some connections to some pretty deadly themes. So I just still have it because it's funny, but I don't think I've ever actually worn it out.
Today's the day, man. Put it on.
I also got you a t-shirt that said, was it like Oedipus is the original motherfucker? Yeah, yes. Oedipus was the original motherfucker.
Yeah. So taking a history class.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I love this brand. It's so interesting. It's so fun. It's like it's such a mind twist where you're like they're selling water. That's what's happening here. Mm-hmm. And I love just a little bit more fun in your life using storytelling.
Everybody needs it.
Welcome to Top Hat. This is the part of the episode where we dissect and analyze and discuss some of the epic storytelling learnings we got from this week's expert storyteller. And this week, we had someone really cool. We finally got to talk to someone from one of my favorite storytelling brands, Liquid Death. I'm obsessed with this brand because they apply so much interesting story and inspiration and branding to water. Right? Everything from the way the can is designed, to the way their website is designed, the way they say murder you first, the way they do ads in unexpected ways. I love talking to him. Something I really enjoyed was he talked about how they brought all marketing in-house, right? How they kind of built their own marketing agency from the ground up because no one's going to understand their brand the way they do, because they're incredibly intentional about every little thing that they do. even though they have ads backgrounds, they created this culture of innovation and branding that only works for them.
It is supposed to be something that's more dynamic. And it actually helped with building and maintaining that brand once they got off of that path. And also, something else that we try to ask Andy about is, do you take inspiration from other brands or stuff like that? And the response we got is no, right? Sometimes you don't have to study what other brands or other people are doing in the same realm to be yourself and be that thing well. So that's something I think quite valuable.
Something we talked about on the show with him is that health food, right? The way health food is marketed, we live in Los Angeles. We've seen how health food is marketed. Yeah. It's very specific. And they're like, we're selling healthy products, but we're not going to market it anything like them. Let them keep defining health foods brand and let us be Liquid Death.
Yeah, and that in effect made the customers take healthier choices, right? And that was one of the most unexpected angle to Liquid Death for me is you have people drinking Liquid Death in replacement of alcohol to be healthier, and it doesn't make them feel out of place when they're drinking out of the Liquid Death can with a bunch of people who are grabbing, beers and stuff. And also for teenagers, instead of all those energy drinks that have a lot of sugar and caffeine and all those substances that isn't great for their bodies, they're just drinking water. But because it's Liquid Death, because it looks cool, they're okay with doing that. And so they're able to be healthy and be cool at the same time. And it's pretty remarkable that they're able to sell this coolness or create this coolness experience, right? That still allows people to be in that crowd, but doesn't feel like they're being excluded.
And one thing they're very also intentional about is, like you were talking about, the cans, the tall boy cans, because a part of their story is not just what they put on the bottle. It's not just the ads they run. It's how do you experience Liquid Death? How does it look like when you're experiencing Liquid Death? And having a can in your hand can be a social lubricant in its own way. But another thing that they're really intentional about is that just bringing joy and fun into their brand. And they don't even call them ads, right? Yeah. It's so when you're watching their videos, their content, you're not like thinking, oh, where's the promo code? Or, oh, I got to go buy the new Toyota RAV4. It's, we just want to entertain you. And by doing so, maybe you'll remember Liquid Death. Maybe that brand will become more cool to you. How do we entertain first?
Yeah, it's like bringing levity to a conversation, right? As something we talked about with Allison Wood Brooks from our previous episode. But it takes a lot of courage to dare to bring levity into your storytelling, into marketing, if you will. And that's what Liquid Death is daring to try. And it's really paying off. Their YouTube videos have millions and millions of views. So allowing yourself to approach marketing with joy, or to approach sharing your story with joy.
How can you be more intentional with the stories you're telling? And how can you bring a little bit more joy? It's going to elevate you as a storyteller. It's going to make you more memorable. And overall, it's going to help you tell better stories, which is why we're here.
And this has been another great episode of the Linen Suit and Plastic Tie podcast. If you enjoy our stories and insights from our extra storytellers, make sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you listen. Leave us a comment and a review to let us know what you're thinking. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at LSPTpod. LinkedIn, Linen Suit and Plastic Tie.
You took a second today to listen to a really cool storyteller and suck up some of his insights. Just by doing that, you become a better storyteller. And we believe storytelling is the essential skill of being human, so you're a better human. We appreciate you. We love that you took the time to listen. Thank you so much. And just try to live with a little bit more joy.
And you'll see us or hear from us next time.